My family abandoned me when I was homeless. 5 years later, they broke in, demanding my house. I just smiled. And called the police. How would you feel if the people who are supposed to love you no matter what betrayed you not once, but twice? They are your own blood and flesh. You don't even have a family. We will take this house. The sheer arrogance of their statement pierced my heart even now, 5 years after they abandoned me with nowhere to go. They arrived at my doorstep with suitcases in tow. Instead of crying, I kept my composure. In a composed manner, I went to my phone and contacted 911. Let me tell you, growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, my life was very typical of most kids. Everyone thought my family looked perfectly normal from the outside. Thomas, my dad, was a bank manager. He was always well dressed and carried his briefcase about like glue. Despite my mom Isabella's lengthy days as a nurse, our house was somehow never dirty. My elder brother Luke was the unrivaled golden kid. He was 3 years my senior. It appeared like your typical American family. We lived in a simple 3-bedroom house. Things were difficult though, beneath that smooth front. The change was noticeable to me from the very start. My parents always thought Luke would go on to do amazing things. His average performance was praised. Everyone expected me to get consecutive A's. My parents celebrated his acceptance to State University with a massive party and a brand new car, even though his scholarship was just half. To pay for his education, they practically emptied their savings. Am I? I was informed that I would have to work part-time in order to pay for college as early as my freshman year of high school. At the age of 15, I was working full-time at the neighborhood diner, where I saved every dime by flipping pancakes and burgers in addition to attending school. Nobody ever said that I was planning to attend a famous university, even though I had great marks and was quite involved in extracurricular activities. Even though they never said it directly, the message was loud and obvious. Luke was a wise financial move. I was the cog in the wheel. My grandma Samantha, who is my mom's mother, was the only person who believed in me and saw me for who I really was. Her little cottage and yard seemed like something out of a fairy tale to me, although she lived approximately an hour away. I would spend 3 weeks of pure happiness there every summer while Luke attended a sports camp that my parents paid for. My salvation came throughout those weeks. With her hands worn from decades of gardening, she would whisper, "Ava," as she delicately guided my fingers into the dirt as we planted tomatoes. As Grandma Samantha would say, "Never let anyone tell you what your worth is. Only you decide that." She would also add, "Never depend on someone else to keep a roof over your head. Learn to build your own." Grandma Samantha possessed an iron will. After my grandpa passed away when my mom was 13 years old, my grandma worked as a seamstress and with the help of her 3 children, saw them through to college. During times when I felt trapped at home, her independence served as a beacon for me. The pressure from my parents grew stronger as I got closer to college. My mother insisted that I follow in her footsteps and become a nurse. "It's a stable profession, Ava. You'll always have work," Mom would continue, oblivious to the reality that medicine had zero fascination for me. Then my dad chimed in to support her, saying, "Creative careers are for people with family money to fall back on." They failed to understand that it was during my junior year that I discovered my true calling: graphic design. Miss Winters, my art instructor, saw that I had a knack for composition and gave me my first introduction to computer-aided design. I spent my after-school hours competing in local events. I couldn't get enough. My folks didn't take my regional design prize seriously. They thought it was a fun pastime rather than a potential profession. The deadline for my senior year of high school to apply to colleges was the pinnacle of the stress. The design department at our local community college was really good, so I applied there as well as to a number of reasonably priced state universities that offered arts programs. However, my parents made it clear that they would not pay for my college unless I changed my major to either business or nursing when the admission letters arrived. During dinner, my dad made it clear that getting a degree in the arts would not be a waste of money. I looked to my mom for encouragement, but she just gazed at her plate. "If you want to throw away your future, you can pay for it yourself." Returning from college, Luke grinned across the table. "Maybe you should listen to Dad, Ava. Not everyone is cut out for a real career." I sobbed myself to sleep that night. Still, I woke up the next morning with a calm determination. No matter what happened, I would go to community college, work full-time, and earn a degree in design. My dad sighed and shrugged again when I told him about my decision over breakfast. "Your life, your mistake." I then moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates after graduating with honors from high school. Despite putting in approximately 42 hours a week at both my retail job and coffee business, I managed to keep my GPA in design classes at 3.9. Drawing courage from Grandma Samantha's unfaltering faith in me, I paid her a visit whenever I could. I transferred to a public institution to complete my bachelor's degree after 2 years at community college. At that point, I hardly spoke to my parents anymore. Our only contact was during our annual Christmas visits, when my dad would probe me about my future earnings potential, and my mom would sneakily give me $22 while whispering, "In case you need to eat." By this point, Luke had graduated and landed a job at a financial firm. A dead ringer for my dad. His achievements were quietly highlighted at every family function, while my apparent failure was emphasized. "Luke just got a promotion," my mom would declare with a hint of pride, "and he's looking at buying a condo downtown." The comparison, though unsaid, weighed heavily on everyone's tongue. My 4-year absence from home coincided with my 22nd year of college, when I earned my bachelor's degree. In lieu of my commencement celebration, my parents opted to attend a conference pertaining to Luke's profession. The sole member of Grandma Samantha's family present was her, who was already a walker-bound grandma owing to her arthritis. More than 1,000 faraway relatives, her happy grin as I crossed the stage meant the world to me. After completing my degree, I made the decision to relocate to Philadelphia in search of more favorable employment prospects. I had landed an internship that might turn into a full-time job, and the design community there was thriving. I had supper with Grandma Samantha the night prior to my departure. I confessed, "I'm scared," when we ate pie on her porch. She raised her 73-year-old blue eyes to meet mine and said, "What if they're right and I fail?" as she held my hand. "Ava, the only true failure is living someone else's dream. You follow your heart and I will always be here if you need a soft place to land." I woke up the next morning with those words ringing in my ears, and I hopped in my beat-up car, ready to take on the world and show my family that I could succeed the way I wanted to. Despite the difficulties, I gained so much from my first 2 years in Philadelphia. After finishing my internship, I was offered a position as a junior designer at a boutique advertising agency. Despite the low salary, I was able to expand my portfolio and network. A teacher named Jessica, whom I had met online, lived with me in a fairly run-down 2-bedroom apartment. Thrift shop bargains and do-it-yourself projects helped us transform our little apartment into a homey abode, and we made fast friends in the process. Whenever I could, I would see Grandma Samantha and call her once a week. While I still made sure to phone them on my birthday and visited them during a tense Thanksgiving, that was about it for our communication. Naturally, Luke had gotten another promotion and purchased that condo in the city. Whenever we chatted, my mom would bring it up. In the end, it all came crashing down 5 years ago. Our sector was severely impacted by the recession. Within a 2-month period, the marketing agency where I was employed lost a number of significant clients. There was a notice of bankruptcy attached to the window, and the doors were closed when we all showed there one Monday morning. Suddenly, I found myself without a job. I began applying for design jobs I could find, freelancing on the side, and getting in touch with former clients. However, spending cuts were implemented across the board, with freelance designers being one of the first to go. Since I still needed to pay rent and buy groceries, my already small savings quickly disappeared. Even though Jessica wasn't exactly rich with cash, she helped out wherever she could by paying for utilities and sharing what was left over from the teacher's lounge. I got a notice to vacate the premises after 3 months of low pay and steadily increasing expenses. The landlord's tolerance for my 2 months of incomplete rent payment had finally worn thin. I couldn't afford to pay the entire rent on my own, because Jessica and her boyfriend were moving in together the following month. My realization that I was weeks away from becoming homeless sent me into a panic. I choked down my pride and contacted my parents, since there was absolutely nowhere else to turn. After 4 rings, my mom finally picked up the phone and replied, "Hello." "Mom, it's Ava," I whispered, my voice quivering with uneasiness. "I need help." She paused, and I could overhear her pleading with my dad. "Thomas, it's Ava. I asked if I could borrow enough money to cover my rent for 1 month until I found a steady job, trying to explain my predicament as politely as possible. With interest, I would repay them," I said. After I made my plea, there was an agonizingly long period of stillness. At long last, the icy, faraway voice of my dad came over the phone. "Ava, this is exactly what we warned you about. This unstable career path you chose has led you exactly where we predicted." I mumbled, "Dad, please," as tears streamed down my cheeks. "I just need a little help to get back on my feet. I have interviews lined up, but I need somewhere to live." With an interjection from my mom, I learned that we have been paying for Luke's MBA tuition, We simply don't have extra funds right now. I could tell you it was false. My parents had always managed to find a way to fund Luke's pursuits. They meant that they were short on funds for me. When you disregarded our counsel, you made your bed, my dad went on to say. Perhaps this will teach you to make more practical decisions in the future. No assistance, not even a temporary place to stay, was offered at the end of the call. I sobbed till I could hardly breathe as I sat on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by partially packed boxes. I attempted to contact Grandma Samantha that evening, but she was unreachable. My grandma was admitted to the hospital the following day after a phone call from her neighbor, who told me she had pneumonia. There was an overwhelming desire on my part to visit her, but I lacked the means to do so, and nowhere to leave my possessions. I was formally evicted 2 weeks subsequent to that. My trusty 13-year-old Honda Civic was a wreck when Jessica helped me load it up with my most valuable belongings. There was just enough room for my design tools, clothing, and a few essential personal belongings. My remaining $120 went toward renting a modest storage container. Having exhausted all other options, I made my way to my parents' house. I pulled into their driveway on a gloomy October night. I could see them in the living room, obliviously watching TV, through the windows. I mustered up the nerve to sit in my car for 25 minutes before making my way to the door and rang the bell. My father spoke out, but his initial shock soon turned to disdain when he noticed my unkempt appearance and the look of despair on my face. "Ava, what are you doing here?" "Dad, I lost my apartment. I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I can find work and save for a new place. Please." He scowled as he passed me and my luggage-laden automobile. This is exactly what happens with these artistic careers. Instability. My mother stepped out from behind him and asked, "Thomas, who is it?" Her face hardened as she caught sight of me. "It appears that our daughter has ended up on the streets," he responded condescendingly. I spoke the words, "I am not homeless," as my voice cracked. "I just need family right now." With his arms folded, my dad stood. "You chose your path, Ava. You chose to ignore our guidance. Now you need to take responsibility for those choices." My mom tacked on, "We are hosting the neighborhood association meeting tomorrow," as if it clarified everything. This really is not a good time. I stood there in the pouring rain, my jaw tightly clamped. "You have made it clear you do not need our input in your life decisions," my father remarked with more conviction. "You cannot reject our advice, and then expect our support when those decisions lead to hardship." He then shut the door behind him. The rain soaked through my jacket as I lingered on their porch for a few minutes before making my way back to my car. I waited in their driveway, seeing their shadows as they drew back the drapes, hoping against hope that they would reconsider and extend an offer of a bed, a spare room, or anything else. Nobody ever did. At last I made it to a Walmart parking lot, where I slept in the driver's seat with $30 in my pocket and nowhere to go that night. In an effort to get my brother's assistance, I contacted Luke via phone and text, but he did not return my calls or texts. I used the library's computers to look for jobs and residences, and took showers at a gym where I was a member for 2 weeks while living in my car. I kept trying to reach my parents by calling and leaving more urgent voicemails, but they never returned my calls. I noticed Luke's car in their driveway one night as I drove by their house. With the exception of me, the whole family was there. At that moment, I hit rock bottom. Without a place to call home or loved ones to lean on, I felt entirely alone. Whoever was meant to love me no matter what had abandoned me just when I needed them most. It was all because I had the audacity to go against their wishes and pursue my own path. Then, sat in a corner of a nearby coffee shop on a chilly November morning, nursing a single cup of tea that I had bought to rationalize utilizing their free Wi-Fi. For hours I had scoured the area for cheap lodging and design employment. After weeks of living in my car, my appearance took a nosedive. My clothes were wrinkled from being in garbage bags, and no matter how much I tried in the gym showers, I still looked noticeably disheveled. I was so engrossed in my laptop that I didn't even notice someone was approaching until they spoke. "Ava. Ava Brooks." As I raised my eyes to glance around, I beheld Lily Harper, a former colleague of mine from the advertising agency. Clad in a dapper peacoat and clutching a to-go cup of coffee, she bore an uncanny resemblance to the accomplished career woman I had sorely failed to emulate. Although I was embarrassed by how I looked, I quickly responded, "Lily." "Hi," I added. "I assumed it was you. It's been my goal to get in touch with you." After the agency closed, all of the company email addresses disappeared. She sank into the chair across from me, either oblivious to or graciously disregarding my disheveled appearance. How have you been? She asked. Is this your first job? I thought about being dishonest and putting on an act, but I was too tired to pretend. No, really, things have been moving quite slowly for me as a freelancer. To be honest, I'm not sure where I want to go at the moment. Moving from an air of casual friendliness to one of true worry, Lily asked. Between locations as in housing? As I fought back tears of shame, I nodded and said, it's been a rough few months. Ava, are you making a home in your car? Lily asked with a low voice as she leaned forward. I nodded once more, speechless as tears streamed down my cheeks, and Lily drew her chair closer and placed a hand on my arm, instantly piercing through my residual composure. Why were none of us approached by you? After the closure, everyone in the team started checking in with one another. I didn't want anyone to know how badly I was failing, I said. Everyone else seemed to land on their feet. It was tough for everyone, Lily said while shaking her head. She studied my expression for a moment before asking, when was the last time you had a proper meal? I was jobless for 6 weeks before I found something. When I thought about it, I realized I couldn't remember. Granola bars and dollar menu items from fast food joints had been my lifesavers when money was tight. Come on, Lily urged, rising to her feet. Get everything you need. Accompany me, my friend. Before I could raise an objection, she had retrieved my laptop and bag, escorted me to her car, and insisted that I temporarily leave mine in the coffee shop parking lot. After 30 minutes, we sat in her cozy apartment, where she prepared sandwiches and soup. She escorted me to her guest bedroom after I finished eating. It's not much, but it has a real bed, and it's yours for as long as you need it, she remarked, placing new towels on the dresser. My heart sank at her generosity. I can't accept this, Lily. We were just co-workers, I remarked, my conscience weighted with guilt. We were a team, she straightened me out. And now we're friends. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she said, that's what friends do. Besides, I might have a job opportunity for you. Lily shared the news that her boyfriend Michael was the owner of a small web development design business that was looking for a graphic designer, or someone to help out with user interface design and other related tasks. The salary was rather low, but the job was consistent. I will speak to him tonight, but I cannot guarantee anything, she said. Until then, get some rest, wash off the stress, and we'll sort it out. I met with Michael the following morning, accompanied by Lily. His studio was modest but expanding, and after looking over my portfolio, he extended an instant offer of an entry-level position, a step down from my previous position, but it was steady employment with a regular payment, and I accepted without hesitation. I was helping Lily get my car and the few belongings I had been living with out of the spare room that afternoon when my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Am I talking to Ava Brooks? When I responded, a voice that didn't recognize me asked, yes, this is she. Your grandmother's next-door neighbor is this woman, Nancy Holden. Please, I have been attempting to get in touch with you. Your grandma's health has taken a turn for the worst. Physicians do not have high hopes. Messages left at Grandma Samantha's neighbor's number, but we had missed each other's calls, and my heart fell because I hadn't been able to check on her as regularly throughout the stress of my own issue. Nancy went on to say, I believe you should come if you can. She's been asking for you. After I told Lily what was going on, she volunteered to take me the 3 hours to my grandma's town. We'll go right now, she said. Just let me call Michael to reschedule tomorrow's meeting. Grandma Samantha appeared diminutive in the hospital bed, hooked up to oxygen and monitors, but her expression changed when she spotted me, and she extended a feeble hand. We arrived to the hospital shortly after 9 that evening, she said. My Ava, I had a feeling you would show up. I spent the night by her side, holding her hand and sharing the good news of my new work opportunity. I spared her the details of my homelessness and my parents' rejection because I knew she was too frail to handle such sad news. Instead, I centered my story around the positive change that had occurred in my situation because of Lily. I told you before, she said. You blaze your own trail. A key and a folded document were inside a little box that Nancy had taken to the hospital, and she requested me to get it out of her purse in the wee hours of the morning. The house is yours. It's my will, she whispered. Yours from the beginning. Listen now, she said, her voice strikingly strong despite her frailty. You have the spirit, the strength. You will recover and come home. I attempted to argue, but she shook her head. Your parents are with Luke. Roots are essential. With her hand in mine, Grandma Samantha slept peacefully 2 days later. As I grieved, I had to deal with the practicalities of her passing. My parents were called by the hospital and came to help with the funeral arrangements, appearing appropriately solemn but otherwise uninvolved. Grandma Samantha had bequeathed her cottage and savings to me, with just little keepsakes to my mother and Luke, as we read the will, and their demeanor altered drastically. "Mother always favored you," my mother accused me after the lawyer departed, and my father's face clouded with rage. My mother also teared up. Instead of answering, I went and got the keys to my grandma's house, and started getting ready to move in with my surprise bequest. Though it had been lovingly cared for, the cottage's 85 years of decor and appliances were a stark reminder of my grandmother's age. Nevertheless, it was mine, a home that no one could ever take away from me. With the help of her apartment's essentials and a whole weekend of cleaning, Lily assisted me with the move-in. "It has good bones," she said as we scrubbed the kitchen, "and amazing natural light for a home office." Despite the garden's overgrowth, I could almost hear my grandmother's voice telling me, "You construct your own shelter, Ava." It had been months since I'd felt secure and hopeful enough to fall asleep in her presence. It was always an option. Having found a stable job that I could do remotely and had a roof over my head, I started the process of rebuilding my life. I converted the tiny front room of the cottage into a home office, buying a new desk and all the design equipment I needed. Michael was pleased with my work and gave me more responsibility and pay as I proved myself. The cottage itself became my passion project. I worked on one area at a time, doing my best to stay true to the spirit of Grandma Samantha. Her garden, her pride and joy, became my weekend therapy. I began with little knowledge of plants, but I bought books and watched videos to help me gradually restore the overgrown beds. The transition from city life to small-town living was challenging at first. I was shy and withdrawn, still hurting from my family's rejection, and I was hesitant to make friends. However, I soon learned that small towns have a way of embracing newcomers, whether they're friendly or not. My neighbor, Mrs. Parker, welcomed me with a casserole, even though she had known me for years as Samantha's granddaughter. I started making small talk and waved at people on my way to the post office or grocery store 6 months after I moved in, and then there was Tom from the hardware store. He started setting aside old doorknobs that he thought would go with the cottage's character. James Carter, who was approximately my age and had acquired the store from his uncle just a year before I moved to town, was the proprietor of a small local bookstore that I had been visiting for design inspiration, and more importantly, the great coffee they provided in their associated cafe. "Why don't you just buy it already? You're going to wear that design book out," he said one day as I bought another coffee while perusing the same interior design book. "I am renovating bit by bit due to budget constraints," I smiled and said. "Renovation consultant fee." The following day, I walked in and saw the book behind the counter, wrapped in brown paper. "James, your coffee expertise has elevated our offerings." We became friends over coffee and books, and then over dinner. James was someone I felt comfortable opening up to since he never judged me the way my family did. When I finally told him everything that had led me to this town, he listened patiently without interrupting. After I finished speaking, his sole remark was, "Your parents sound like real pieces of work. It's a shame they're gone." After gaining experience and a solid client list, I took a leap of faith and opened Elevation Designs, a small design studio that specializes in branding for local businesses. Working with Michael's company had shown me that many of these companies struggled with their visual identity but couldn't afford the high fees charged by large agencies. Once I had a website and business cards in hand, I started approaching local shops and restaurants. My first client was James, who needed a new logo and signage for the bookstore. Word got out, and I had enough regular clients to leave my position with Michael within a year. We still worked together, referring clients to each other. I upgraded the cottage as my business expanded, putting in a new roof, modernizing the heating system, and redecorating the kitchen with new appliances while preserving the lovely cabinets that Grandma Samantha had adored. The property value went up significantly as a result of all these upgrades, but that was secondary to my desire to build a home that paid tribute to her while expressing my personal style. With my growing expertise, I tended to the garden and constructed a little patio for days when the weather was nice enough to work outside, as well as a fire pit for those evenings when I wanted to relax by myself. James would often come over, reading me novels he thought I'd like, and listening to my plans for future improvements. At the 5-year mark after Grandma Samantha's death, my life had taken a dramatic turn. Elevation Designs, run out of a converted garage on my property, employed 3 people in addition to myself. I had become well established in the neighborhood, having joined the Small Business Association and even lending a hand in planning the yearly arts festival. James and I were moving beyond friendship, but we were moving slowly because we both valued our independence. Among my friends, I had a growing network of local connections, frequent visits from Lily and Michael, and I hadn't spoken to my parents or Luke since the funeral. Every now and then, I'd get a Christmas card with just their names printed on it, no personal message. The cottage, which had been my grandmother's refuge, had become my own sanctuary and success story. The girl who had slept in her car now owned a debt-free home, ran a profitable business, and had created a life filled with meaningful connections. I was hesitant to cut ties entirely, but needed to protect myself from additional pain, so I sent similar impersonal cards in return. My hard-won tranquility was about to be destroyed by the very people who had once turned me away, but I had done exactly what Grandma Samantha felt I could do: built my own refuge, literally and mentally. On a typical Tuesday morning, I received an email from Luke. It had been 5 years since I had heard from him, so the sight of his name in my inbox turned my coffee tasteless. The subject line of the message read, "Touching base, dear Ava." The message started with an artificially friendly tone. "We haven't communicated for much too long. What you have achieved as a design firm is quite remarkable, and I was amazed when I found your website not long ago. Your parents have expressed their worry over the years since they last heard from you. I pray everything is fine. Come on, Luke. Let's meet up soon." I read the short letter over and over again, but it failed to address my concerns about his lack of support when I needed it, or his rejection of me when I was homeless. Instead, it was a casual, "Hi there," as if we had just lost touch due to mutual indifference. On the day of our lunch date, I showed James the email. Returning my phone to me, he made the observation, "Sounds like someone wants something." He went on to explain, "People don't usually reach out after 5 years of silence just to say hello." Having developed the same suspicion, I nodded in agreement. "The timing is strange too. Why is this the time? Is a response in the works?" he asked. I considered the question. Not yet. After 5 years of silence, the sight of my parents' number rang 3 days later, and I answered without thinking, wanting to know whether there was more to this sudden interest. "Ava, darling," my mother's unnaturally cheerful voice chirped. "It is so good to finally hear your voice." A non-committal, "Mom," I responded. "This is unexpected. You know, we've been giving you a lot of attention recently." According to Luke, he tried getting in touch but had no response. We had concerns. "I've been busy," I said. "Running my business takes a lot of time." "Your website was visible to us, yes. Impressive, my dear. Your father and I were just expressing our utmost pride in all that you have achieved. Anyway, we feel terrible about the misunderstandings in the past." The praise felt hollow after years of criticism and abandonment, my mother said before I had a chance to reply. "Family is paramount, and we long to re-establish contact. Maybe we may drop by soon to see you." Complicated matters? Is that what you call rejecting your daughter when she was homeless? I asked again, my voice quivering with frustration. "We all messed up, Ava." My mom paused and then spoke again, this time with a quieter voice. "Even though we were going through a tough patch at the time, it is now behind us. Our current priority should be mending our relationship." I promptly canceled the phone after agreeing to consider a visit without settling on a date since her tone seemed scripted, as if she had practiced this talk. I answered the phone that night, even though it was against my better judgment, since I had gotten a call from Luke. "Hey sis," he began with an artificial smile. "My mom said you two had a conversation. It's wonderful that we are all getting back together. It's Luke. What's happening?" I inquired directly. Why the sudden interest in reuniting as a family after 5 years? "Why wouldn't a brother desire to mend fences with his sister?" he asked, his voice slightly off-key. However, I must admit that things have been somewhat difficult as of late. In the following 20 minutes, Luke filled us in on the family situation. Our father had to retire early from the bank due to irregularities discovered in his management practices during an internal investigation. He had avoided criminal charges but had his reputation ruined due to his poor investment decisions, which had caused him to lose most of his savings and accrue substantial debt. Our mom was unable to perform full shifts at the hospital due to back difficulties. "Our family has had to drastically reduce our living space because our condo was foreclosed and our parents had to sell our house," Luke remarked. "They've moved into a tiny apartment." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that. And I meant it with all my heart. That must be difficult. Sure, we need to be there for each other when times are rough, don't we?" He didn't seem to pick up on the irony in his comment. "Anyway, we were thinking we could come visit next weekend, get to know your town, see Grandma's old place, reconnect." I grudgingly consented to meet for lunch on Saturday, making it plain that this would not be an overnight visit. I informed James, they're coming Saturday, and from what Luke said, they're in financial trouble, after hanging up the phone. May I be of service? I eagerly accepted, already nervous about the imminent meeting, as James offered with a voice full of moral support. My mother greeted me with weeping eyes as my family came that Saturday, their usual magnificent presence subdued by circumstances. Luke hung back, studying the cottage with undisguised interest. My mother made the observation. You've done wonders with the place. It's so much nicer than when your grandmother lived here, as I gave them a brief tour. Grandmother kept it perfectly nice, I responded, my chest constricted. I've just updated some things while maintaining her style. Looks like your little design business is doing well, my dad said, casting a glance at the shiny new kitchen appliances. Must have cost a fortune. Elevation Designs is doing very well, James whispered in a suave voice. Ava has clients across 3 states now. Seeing James made my father's eyes narrow a little. He obviously wasn't expecting me to have help. Are you James Carter then? I own the bookstore in town and have known Ava since she moved here. During lunch, my parents and Luke had a tense exchange, with my mom making 3 mentions of their tight apartment, and Luke lamenting the impossibility of finding a job despite his qualifications. We alternated between appreciating the house and delicately stressing their current challenges. Just as they were about to depart, Luke requested to visit the restroom. He remained gone for an abnormally lengthy period. Upon his return, I observed that he was holding his phone. He made a casual remark about how the cottage had really solid bones and how they were getting terrific reception here, solid investment opportunity. James lent me a hand with the cleanup after they went. Well, that was awkward, he remarked as he loaded the dishwasher. Wasn't it strange that your brother photographed every room? A queasy feeling spread across my stomach as I nodded. And my father asking about property values in the area, and my mother commenting on how much space there was for just one person. Ava, you need to be careful, James warned, echoing our mutual suspicions. They are planning something. My mother wanted the lunch recipes, my father wanted to know more about the heating system, and Luke wanted to know if I had the original deed from Grandma Samantha. Every conversation felt like a probe, looking for vulnerabilities, throughout the following week's worth of calls from my relatives. During their second visit, which was 2 weeks later, the truth became horrifyingly obvious. While we were sitting in the yard, my father brought up the subject immediately. Ava, your mom and I have been discussing this. There are 3 bedrooms in this house, but there's only one of you. In that little apartment, we are having a hard time. We should definitely move in here. A family should live in a family home. I stood there frozen in place, staring at him. I spoke up at last, saying, "This is my home. I inherited it from Grandma." "Yes, but surely she intended it to benefit the whole family," said my mom. "She wouldn't have wanted us struggling while you have all this space." "Actually, she specifically left it to me because she knew I would care for it properly," I said with rage, "and because she knew I was the only one who truly appreciated it." "Well, we are family, regardless of her intentions," my father stated with a whiff of dismissal. "We need to be there for one another. The room above the garage could be Luke's, while your mom and I would share the master suite." My reaction was one of disbelief as I declared, "That is my office. Where I run my business." As if solving a simple problem, my mother said, "It would be a much more efficient use of the space if you moved your little computer to the dining room." "This is not happening," I said with conviction. "I am sorry for your situation, but you cannot move in here." From that point on, my mother would alternate between making passive-aggressive remarks and blaming my father, and my father would grow more forceful. After they departed, I promptly contacted my attorney, the same one who had dealt with Grandma Samantha's will. I briefed him on the circumstances and requested that he examine all papers pertaining to my property ownership. Luke stayed eerily silent, tapping away on his phone, during the entire dispute. He gave me his word that everything was in place and that the house was legally yours. They are completely without any legitimate claim to it. In spite of this reassurance, I went ahead and installed security cameras at the front and back of the house and property, as James had suggested. I had a feeling this confrontation was far from over. 3 weeks after that awkward visit, I had to go to Boston for a design conference, a crucial chance to meet prospective clients and find out what was new in the industry. The conference was for 3 days. On the second evening, when I was networking at a reception, I got a text from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Parker. James offered to look after the house while I was away, but he had to manage the bookstore and could only drive by occasionally. Until tomorrow, I assumed you were away. Noticed that your house was lit up and that people were moving around inside. Is everything all right? I dialed her number without delay, my pulse racing. Please, Mrs. My current location is Boston Parker. Nobody has no business being in my home. Oh no, she said, her voice betraying her fear. Should I contact the authorities? No, I need to check my security cameras first, I calmly said. I'll give you a call right back. With shaky hands, I accessed the security app on my phone. The camera showed 3 people unloading boxes and luggage from my father's car in the driveway. I stared in horror as my dad used something to force the rear door lock, then let my mother and Luke inside. I contacted James right away. He was closing the bookstore. They are breaking into my house, I informed him, my voice quivering. They're moving in while I'm gone. He assured her. I'll get in my car and go over right now. Should I contact the authorities? I still hadn't gotten over the betrayal when I said, not yet. Let me try calling them first. While keeping an eye on the camera, I dialed my dad's cell phone number, but he declined. I then tried calling my mom and Luke, but the same thing happened. At last, I resorted to calling the landline I had set up in the cottage. After a few rings, Luke finally picked up the phone, saying, "Hello, Brooks residence." He spoke in a manner befitting his place. "Luke, I don't understand why you're in my place. It was a requirement of mine." After a little silence, someone sighed and said, "Ava, we were planning to give you a call tomorrow. We're still in the process of settling in." "Acclimating?" "Sure thing. You vandalized my home? Are you breaking the law?" "This is a family house, so there's no need to act theatrical," he said calmly. "A familial unit. As an aside, you're obviously not going to use all this room to yourself." I could still make out my father's voice speaking. "Tell her we will discuss it when she returns," as Luke partially covered the phone. "The call has been given." I screamed out, "You need to leave right now or I'll call the cops if you don't get out of my house in 30 minutes. "Ava, it would be a poor decision," Luke said with a more serious tone. "There is no other place for us to go. It would be awful to involve the authorities in a situation involving your own family. Besides, Mom and Dad are the ones with a real family connection to this house, not you." "I own this house, Luke. I inherited it from my grandmother." He waved it off as a technicality, but added, "Anyway, we've already spoken to a lawyer about challenging the will. When Grandma made those plans, she was elderly and not very sharp. Our argument for overturning it is strong." Despite my knowledge that they lacked any legal standing, the prospect of a court battle was terrifying, so I abruptly canceled the call and scheduled a trip home for the following morning, skipping the last day of the conference. James greeted me at the airport with a somber expression on his face. "They're still there," he informed me. "I passed by earlier today." "Mind my own business," your dad urged me as he opened the door, explaining that it was a family issue. "Are the cops on their way?" As we made our way to the cottage, I inquired. "I spoke to your lawyer, but I thought that should have been your decision," he responded. He dismissed their assertions as baseless in relation to the will challenge. "Your grandma was completely capable of making the changes to her will as she underwent routine cognitive evaluations as part of her medical treatment." Upon our arrival to the cottage, I was taken aback to learn that my family had already made noticeable alterations. Within my absence, they had taken possession of the place, placing my father's golf clubs at the front door and my mother's colorful cushions on the porch swing. Using my key, I cautiously entered my own home, where I was met with an even more disturbing sight than I had anticipated. The living room, which I had painstakingly organized, had been completely transformed, with boxes of my parents' possessions piled high in one corner and old family photos, which I had long since removed, replaced by new ones on the mantel. My mother was taken aback to see me as she came out of the kitchen. "Ava, we were not expecting you until tomorrow." "Well, it's obvious." "Where is Dad?" I responded icy. "In the master bedroom, organizing his clothes." She casually mentioned my bedroom, which infuriated me. I went to my closet and saw my father's suits hanging, while my own clothes were pushed to the side. Upstairs in the room that served as my office, which was above the garage, I found Luke. He had rearranged my design equipment to make room for his bed. I called them all into the living room, where James stood at my side, offering encouragement. "You all need to leave," I said with conviction. "This agreement is sensible for everyone involved, Ava." My father started by saying this in an authoritative tone. "While we've been fighting for survival, you've got this huge house to yourself." "A situation of your own making," I remarked, "and completely irrelevant to my home ownership." "You don't even have a real family," my mother observed with an unexpected degree of bitterness. No husband, no children, just you and your little business. This house is more important to us than to you. That isn't how property ownership works, James interrupted. He caught my father's eye as he glared at him. You are unconcerned about this. This is a household matter. James is more family to me than any of you have been, said I. He did not abandon me when I was homeless and desperate. Old tales, Luke waved carelessly. But we're here today, prepared to be a family once more. This isn't about family. After you've used up all your resources and need something from me, I added, raising my voice. You seem to be interested in purchasing my house. I heard my dad say, one way or another, we will take this house. He was quite direct and not holding back. We had previously discussed our alternatives with an attorney. Your non-existent options, I corrected. With unsettling assurance, he declared. The house is legally mine for now, but we have documented evidence of your grandmother's declining mental state. That statement rang true. We have a solid claim to her estate as her direct descendants. Without saying a word, I pulled out my phone and contacted 911, knowing full well that he was bluffing. But the conflict had escalated to an unacceptable level. Hey, what you up to? With her widened eyes, my mother demanded. Calling the police to report trespassers in my home, I calmly replied. To clarify, we are not intruders, and we are your family, she yelled out. I informed the dispatcher that family does not break into each other's homes, and I gave my address and explained that someone had broken into my home without my permission and was refusing to leave. James intervened just in time to prevent my father from reaching for the phone. Advising my father, "Don't make this worse," was his strong word. There was tension and silence for the 15 minutes it took the police to come. When 2 officers came knocking on the door, I replied and described what had happened, presenting them my identification along with the cottage's address and the deed. These people entered my home without permission while I was out of town, I pointed out. They damaged my back door lock to get in. The police officers were unwavering in their assessment of the situation, despite my father's best efforts to downplay its significance as a family dispute. Sir, if you do not have legal residence here and the homeowner wants you to leave, you need to leave, the senior law enforcement officer said. Otherwise, you will be arrested for trespassing. I can't believe this. She happens to be my daughter. My dad was not happy about it. Do not assume that you have permission to enter her property without her express written consent. You have been given 30 minutes to gather your immediate possessions, the police responded. We can arrange for anything else to be picked up at a later time. As they grabbed their belongings under the watchful eye of the police, my distraught mother came running up to me. What gives you the right to treat your own parents this way? Just like you could reject your own daughter when she was helpless, I said, maintaining eye contact with her. The police were given the video footage of the break-in and urged me to get a restraining order. The next day, my lawyer submitted the necessary paperwork, and a week later, I had a temporary order that forbade my relatives from coming near my house. My emotions were all over the place as I watched the police remove my family from my home. I was angry at their entitlement and hurt by their profound betrayal, but mostly I felt validated in my righteous position. I had finally stood up to their emotional manipulation and abuse. I sat with James on the porch swing that my grandmother had liked that night after we had secured the house with new locks. With his arm around my shoulders, he reassured me. You did the right thing. As I watched the night sky fill with stars, I responded, I know. It should not have come to this. My family's attempt at a takeover dragged on for months in court. The temporary restraining order was later made permanent when proof of their plot surfaced. Luke's phone texts showed that they planned to move in while I was away and would try to evict me by claiming emotional duress. Grandma Samantha's sound mental state was confirmed by my lawyer's presentation of her medical records, which exposed their bluff about challenging the will. My father and Luke were both sentenced to probation and community service for minor offenses, and they insisted throughout the proceedings that they were innocent and that the family property should be divided equally. However, when the fallout from their actions became apparent, my mother started to display symptoms of regret. 3 weeks following the court hearing, I got a handwritten letter from her. In contrast to the defensive and entitled tone they had all adopted earlier, her comments appeared sincere in her regrets. I do not expect forgiveness, she said. But I need you to know that I see now how terribly we failed you. In light of everything that has happened recently and all through your life, I can no longer pretend that what we did was justified, even though your father and Luke are still angry. We abandoned you at the very moment you needed us. You can't get away with that. My emotions were all over the place in response to the letter. I wanted to believe in her regret, but I was also afraid she was trying to manipulate me further. After giving it some thought, I penned a short civil response that acknowledged her apology, but did not offer immediate reconciliation, because trust that had been so badly damaged could not be restored so easily. I sought professional help to heal the emotional wounds inflicted by the experience, which included seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma and becoming a member of a support group for individuals dealing with toxic family relationships. Listening to the stories of others who had been betrayed in similar ways helped me realize that I was not alone and that it was crucial to my healing process to establish healthy boundaries. Family is not defined by blood, my therapist would sometimes remind me. It is defined by consistent love, respect, and support. As I thought about the people who had given me these things, James, whose unwavering presence had become an anchor of my joy. Lily, who had given me a hand when I needed it most. And the neighborhood and fellow entrepreneurs who had accepted me without criticism. This truth rang true. During those difficult months, my relationship with James grew stronger. His steadfast support during the family crisis had shown me the meaning of true partnership. On the first anniversary of the break-in, he proposed in Grandma Samantha's garden, which was now thriving with the perennials I had planted in her honor. "I would be honored to start that family with you. You deserve a family who sees your worth," he added, offering a modest, but stunning ring. 6 months down the road, we tied the knot in a modest ceremony right there in the garden. Michael was on James's side, and Lily was my attendant. A restriction that preserved the joy of the day was not inviting my parents and Luke. On the contrary, I was embraced by the family I had selected, individuals who had demonstrated their affection by deeds, not blood ties. Now that things have returned to normal, I've been thinking about how to make something positive out of my difficult past. The cottage, which had been a cause of contention before, is now a haven for those in need, including me. In memory of Grandma Samantha, I set up a modest foundation to help young adults who are experiencing homelessness as a result of rejection from family members find temporary accommodation and professional mentorship. "Everyone deserves a safe place to land," I told the local press when they reported the foundation's debut. "And everyone deserves the chance to build their own success story." Sophia, a 22-year-old student of graphic design whose parents had abandoned her when she switched her degree from business to art, was the first to receive the award. It was really similar to my personal experience. In addition to an internship at Elevation Designs, I extended an offer to her for the apartment that had been converted from the garage into a respectable living area. Seeing her self-assurance blossom was a lot like my own experience. I had built something much stronger than the ties that had failed me 5 years after my original family had abandoned me. In honor of Grandma Samantha's faith in me, and to show that faith to others, I had constructed a house, a company, a marriage, and a purpose. Through friends and acquaintances we shared, I would periodically hear news about my parents and Luke. My dad always blamed me for everything that went wrong, saying I was too self-centered and hard to forgive. In an effort to start over following his financial setbacks, Luke relocated to a different state. That my mom had tried to start again after divorcing my dad was a sign that she had taken something positive away from our family's collapse. There was still hope for reconciliation, but it would have to be on terms that respected my value as an individual. Sincere regard, rather than practical considerations, should form the basis of any connection. Until then, I made it a point to tend to the solid relationships that had already shown their worth. I frequently thought about the path that had led me here on peaceful evenings while sitting in James's grandmother Samantha's garden. I had learned the hard way that family is not something you are born into, but something you earn through love and respect along my journey from destitute to homeowner, from abandoned daughter to community supporter. I had to figure out that it's better to be alone than to have a family that always brings you down. Furthermore, it is not only feasible, but frequently more satisfying, to build one's own family according to one's own values rather than being bound to harmful blood ties. My grandmother's cottage had evolved into something much more than a mere dwelling. It was tangible evidence that I was worthy of making my mark on the world, that my aspirations and limits were significant. My value was eventually protected when I stood firm in its defense against those who sought to strip it from me. Have you ever had to set limits with relatives who abused your trust? Is your biological family the only one that has ever supported you? If not, have you established a chosen family? We appreciate you taking the time to hear us out. Be cautious. Best of luck. 6 months down the road, we tied the knot in a modest ceremony right there in the garden. Michael was on James's side, and Lily was my attendant. A restriction that preserved the joy of the day was not inviting my parents and Luke. On the contrary, I was embraced by the family I had selected. Individuals who had demonstrated their affection by deeds, not blood ties. Now that things have returned to normal, I've been thinking about how to make something positive out of my difficult past. The cottage, which had been a cause of contention before, is now a haven for those in need, including me. In memory of Grandma Samantha, I set up a modest foundation to help young adults who are experiencing homelessness as a result of rejection from family members find temporary accommodation and professional mentorship. Everyone deserves a safe place to land, I told the local press when they reported the foundation's debut, and everyone deserves the chance to build their own success story. Sophia, a 22-year-old student of graphic design whose parents had abandoned her when she switched her degree from business to art, was the first to receive the award. It was really similar to my personal experience. In addition to an internship at Elevation Designs, I extended an offer to her for the apartment that had been converted from the garage into a respectable living area. Seeing her self-assurance blossom was a lot like my own experience. I had built something much stronger than the ties that had failed me 5 years after my original family had abandoned me. In honor of Grandma Samantha's faith in me, and to show that faith to others, I had constructed a house, a company, a marriage, and a purpose. Through friends and acquaintances we shared, I would periodically hear news about my parents and Luke. My dad always blamed me for everything that went wrong, saying I was too self-centered and hard to forgive. In an effort to start over following his financial setbacks, Luke relocated to a different state. That my mom had tried to start again after divorcing my dad was a sign that she had taken something positive away from our family's collapse. There was still hope for reconciliation, but it would have to be on terms that respected my value as an individual. Sincere regard, rather than practical considerations, should form the basis of any connection. Until then, I made it a point to tend to the solid relationships that had already shown their worth. I frequently thought about the path that had led me here on peaceful evenings while sitting in James's grandmother Samantha's garden. I had learned the hard way that family is not something you are born into, but something you earn through love and respect along my journey from destitute to homeowner, from abandoned daughter to community supporter. I had to figure out that it's better to be alone than to have a family that always brings you down. Furthermore, it is not only feasible, but frequently more satisfying, to build one's own family according to one's own values rather than being bound to harmful blood ties. My grandmother's cottage had evolved into something much more than a mere dwelling. It was tangible evidence that I was worthy of making my mark on the world, that my aspirations and limits were significant. My value was eventually protected when I stood firm in its defense against those who sought to strip it from me.